Okay, so we're diving into a brand that's like the definition of luxury, right? Rolex. But here's the thing. The founder's story. Way more interesting than any ad campaign.
Oh, absolutely. You see that crown, you think instant success, yeah. But the journey, that's the good stuff.
Because this wasn't some kid, trust fund, handed everything. Hans Wilsdorf, the man behind Rolex, was orphaned at 12. 12. Lost both parents within a year. Can you imagine?
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, and you really see that resilience reflected in everything about Rolex. Almost like that early loss, it's like it fueled this drive, to build something that would last. Something timeless.
And it wasn't like things got easier, right?
No.
He goes to live with his uncles.
Yeah.
Who, and I'm not making this up, they sell the family business.
Can you imagine?
I mean, they did use the money to educate him, so.
Which, looking back, huge turning point. Even if Wilsdorf, probably resented it at the time, it gave him this sense of self-reliance, and that ended up defining, well, everything for him.
Makes you wonder, would Rolex even exist without that? Crazy.
Impossible to say, but it definitely shaped the man, right? Yeah. But even with a good education, watches weren't a straight shot for him. Started at an exporting firm, and then this. He wasn't even into the watches at first. It was the business side, the strategy. That's what grabbed him.
So we're talking about a guy, he's always looking for the opportunity, the angle.
Always.
And this is where it gets good. 1900, Wilsdorf gets a job at Kuno Korten. Big deal Swiss watch company.
Huge.
And this is where he has that aha moment.
This is where that vision, man. At a time when everybody's rocking pocket watches, Wilsdorf, he becomes convinced that wristwatches, practically unheard of for men back then, that's the future.
Which, let's be real, pretty bold prediction. Back then, wristwatches, they were seen as, fragile, inaccurate, almost like...
an accessory.
Yeah, exactly.
Wilsdorf was going completely against the grain, betting on something nobody else could see. That takes guts, especially in a world as traditional as watchmaking. He didn't just predict the future, he went out and made it happen.
And he moves fast. Teams up with his brother-in-law, starts importing Swiss movements, the guts of the watch, to England, and they start building their own watches.
And the name? Get this, Wilsdorf and Davis, can you imagine?
Well, thank goodness that didn't last.
Let's talk about a branding nightmare. But, it shows you how much Wilsdorf was learning. That every little thing, the mechanics, the name, it all had to be strategic, intentional. Had to reflect this quality he was so obsessed with building.
So, they need a new name. Something catchy, easy to say, works everywhere.
Yeah.
And in 1908, boom, Rolex.
The rest is history, right? But even that name, short, punchy, unforgettable. Wilsdorf, he understood that a brand, it's more than just a product. It's an idea, an image, and that name, that was the start of something big. But a great name will only get you so far right. And this is where Wilsdorf's timing, maybe even, a little luck comes in. Because remember, wristwatches back then still seen as kind of, fragile, more about fashion than function.
Not exactly known for being tough, yeah.
What changed that?
World War I. You wouldn't think a war would be good for business.
But for Rolex, turning point. Soldiers in the trenches, they figured out pretty quick that digging around for a pocket watch in the middle of a battle, not ideal.
Yeah, not to mention a little risky.
Exactly. A wristwatch, though.
Yeah.
Practical, efficient, heck, maybe even life-saving in some spots. And Rolex, with that rep for accuracy that Wilsdorf had built, it starts, getting some traction on the front lines.
It's crazy how that happens, right? He's been saying all along, wristwatches, that's the future, and then boom, there it is, playing out in the worst way possible.
And Wilsdorf, always thinking 3 steps ahead, he sees another opportunity in all this chaos. Anti-German sentiment, it's on the rise. And remember, he's German, born and raised. So he makes the strategic move, relocates Rolex to Geneva, Switzerland.
Neutral ground. Smart.
Brilliant. Gets him out of the line of fire, so to speak, and it puts Rolex right in the heart of watchmaking. Win-win.
Okay, so he's got the name, the reputation, the location. How do you go from respected to, legendary?
Marketing, my friend. And Wilsdorf, he was a master. 1927, this young swimmer, Mercedes Gleitz, she's going to swim the English Channel. Brutal swim. Freezing water. What does she have on?
A Rolex, I'm guessing?
Rolex Oyster. Waterproof, right. Wilsdorf, he gives it to her, proving his point. But talk about a gamble. If the watch fails, disaster for the brand.
No pressure or anything. So, how'd it go?
Well, Gleitz, she doesn't make it, sadly. Pulled out after 10 hours. Nearly froze to death.
Oh, no.
But the watch, ticking perfectly.
You're kidding. What a story.
And that's marketing, right? Tell a story. That image, that Rolex coming out of the water, good as new, it captured everyone's imagination.
It's not even a watch anymore. It's like a symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Resilience,
Yeah,
precision beating the odds.
exactly. And Wilsdorf builds on that. He knew to stay on top, you got to keep innovating. And that's where the Oyster Perpetual comes in.
Okay, now that's a name I know. What made it so special, though?
2 words. Waterproof, automatic. See, waterproof watches existed, but you had to unscrew the crown to wind them.
Right.
Which kind of defeats the purpose, don't you think?
Yeah, letting water in every time you wind it.
Exactly. Wilsdorf sees that and boom! Oyster Perpetual, waterproof and self-winding, first one ever.
Hold on, self-winding, what does that even mean?
It means you never wind it. Inside, there's this thing, a rotor. It spins when you move your wrist that winds the watch.
So it's like winding itself while you wear it.
Exactly.
That's genius.
Game changer. And it kicks off a whole new era of innovation for Rolex.
All right, you got me. What's next? So we've got this self-winding waterproof, masterpiece. But does Wilsdorf stop there? Of course not. What's next?
Think about it. What's one thing? Even back then, people were always checking.
The time.
Well, yeah, but I was going to say the date.
Oh, right. Duh.
So 1945, bam, the date just. This is where Rolex, they really start to own that whole practical luxury thing.
Okay, but I've seen tons of watches with dates on them. What's the big deal?
Details, my friend. Most watch movements, they change the date, slowly over a few hours.
Really? I never even noticed that.
Most people don't, but
Yeah.
the date just. Instantaneous. Midnight strikes, boom, new date. Just like that.
So no more, half-change number at, 2 a.m.
Exactly. Clean. And get this, he adds the Cyclops lens.
The what?
The Cyclops lens, that little bubble over the date window.
Oh, yeah. I always wondered what that was called.
Magnifies the date, easier to read, small detail, huge impact.
He was all about the details, huh?
Obsessed. He knew real luxury, it's not just about, gold and diamonds. It's craftsmanship, features, the whole experience. And the date just, that was proof.
And then there's, the icon, the Submariner, 1953.
There it is. Everyone's exploring underwater, going deeper, and Wilsdorf, he's right there with them, always ahead of the curve.
Dive watches already existed, though, right?
Yeah.
What made the Submariner different?
Wilsdorf, he didn't just want to fit in, he wanted to dominate the
Yeah.
Submariner. It was built to be the toughest, most reliable dive watch ever. Big, easy to read dial, glows in the dark, rotating bezel, you can track your time underwater, for safety and all that. And get this waterproof to 100 meters, that's twice as deep as most other dive watches back then.
So this wasn't just a fashion statement. This was a tool
Yeah.
for the pros.
Exactly. And just like with that English Channel swim, Rolex made sure everybody knew it. Explorers, divers, even the military, they're all rocking Submariners. The legend was born.
So looking back at Wilsdorf's life, it's easy to focus on the watches, but what's the takeaway, you think?
This was a guy who went through some tough stuff early on, but he didn't let it break him. He used it. And he had this vision, right? Saw something in a product that nobody else did. Took risks, never stopped pushing the limits.
And completely changed how we see watches.
No doubt. Wilsdorf's story, it's a reminder, even those crazy dreams, they can happen. Passion, determination, that drive for excellence, that's how you make it happen.
So next time you see that Rolex crown, remember, it's more than just a watch. It's the legacy of a guy who dared to dream big and ended up changing an entire industry. What impossible thing are you chasing? Maybe, just maybe, Wilsdorf's story is the push you need to take the plunge.